Good morning, Hendersonville. It is good to be with you this morning. If someone hasn't had the opportunity to welcome you this morning, I hope you feel welcome into the presence of Jesus in the midst of his people this morning. My name is William Murphy. I'm one of the student ministers here, and I get the wonderful privilege of working with our 7th through 12th grade students and our families with them. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 2 this morning, so if you want to go ahead and take out your Bibles or your phone and go to Matthew chapter 2. But before we get into Matthew chapter 2, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for the prayers and encouragement that came my way as I had knee surgery just a couple of weeks ago. It was really helpful to get encouragement, and the good news is everything went well. Had a great team of doctors and nurses that worked on me. Good news for you is I really don't want to be standing up here very long. So hopefully we will be able to get out a little bit early today. But we're going to be in Matthew chapter 2. I hope everyone had a great Christmas. Christmas time is always one of my favorite time of the year. It is a time that my brothers and I really enjoyed participating in the festivities, and now with my own family, we enjoy watching our son get to experience his first couple of Christmases, and each year it comes alive more and more as he grows older. Christmas time is always something that brings us a lot of joy. However, what I found is the couple of days after Christmas might be the hardest days of the year for me. All of the festivities have gone. Christmas is over. Gifts are being put away. Lights are coming down. And the calendar turns and life slowly moves back to normal. And if we're honest, sometimes the quiet after Christmas feels a lot heavier than the Christmas season itself. The joy was real. The hope was real. The moment it mattered. But then Monday comes. And in the Christmas story in Matthew, in his wisdom, Matthew refuses to let us stay in the glow of the manger. He pulls us forward past the star that led the Magi, past the gifts, past the celebration, and into the story that happens after the moment that everybody remembered. And this isn't the Christmas card version of the story. This is a lived-in, real-life version following the Lord's calling. And as we close this series this morning looking at the messengers of hope, I believe Matthew is pressing into a question for us. And that question is, will I trust God enough to follow him when the path is unclear? Will I trust God enough to follow him when the path is unclear? Now, as I've grown older, I've found that some of my most transformative moments in life have come after events have already happened, and I've had the opportunity to sit and reflect back on the actions of God for what it ever was that we were participating in. And there was this moment just a few days ago as Christmas was coming to a close and I was reflecting on a wonderful day with family. It was a moment after everyone had left our house and we were just putting our son to sleep, and I just felt sad. Sad that another Christmas had come and gone. The wonderful day that we had just experienced is now just a memory. However, as I began picking up all of the toys and the mess of the day, I realized that the gift that is to come and the gift that is in the present is that God was with us in every moment. And he continues to offer life. He continues to offer joy and love and peace and hope to those who live their identity as a child of God. And that is what we get to carry with us each and every day. Because hope isn't something that we just celebrate in this season. Hope is something that we carry with us wherever we go. Let's look at our text this morning in Matthew chapter 2, verses 13. Feel free to read along beside me. This is after the story that we know all so well, right? The story about the Magi coming from the east to Jerusalem, following a star, looking for the one who has been born King of the Jews. Herod and all of Jerusalem, they were disturbed by the news that there was a new king that has been born. And they wondered where this Messiah was, and they recalled a prophecy in Micah 5, verse 2, it says this, "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, you, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." And Herod, he then sent the Magi to Bethlehem in hopes they would report back to him where the Messiah was. And when the Magi got to Bethlehem, they saw the star that led them to the place right where Jesus was. And they showered him with gifts, and they worshiped him and experienced this amazing moment with the Messiah and with Mary and with Joseph. Now Herod, he was expecting their return because he feared that the birth of a new king would spark a power struggle, and he was not ready to give up his throne. The Magi were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, and they returned to their country to avoiding returning to Herod, and that is where we pick up in verse 13. And it says this, "When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream." Now, don't miss this timing, because the Magi had already left. The gifts had been given. This huge moment where Mary and Joseph had seen the goodness of the Lord has passed. But God is still at work. Joseph, he doesn't get this huge public announcement. He doesn't get a crowd or a spotlight. The message of God comes in the quiet. And isn't it true that the opportunities for transformation and movement in our life often come after we've seen God's actions in big ways? Those weeks at church camp, or the weekends at the retreat, or the amazing times of worship, those moments that we call the Christian high, there's always an invitation for movement. And for Joseph, the invitation, it had no explanation. It had no long-term plan. It had no timeline. It was just obedience, disrupting the plans that Joseph had for his new family. Instead of going back home, it was off to Egypt. And hope doesn't always come wrapped in celebration. Sometimes hope comes as disruption. And the question becomes, will I trust God when his direction interrupts my plans? And continuing in Matthew 2, verse 13 and 14, it says, "The angel said, 'Get up,' he said, 'take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him.' And so he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt." Joseph, he doesn't delay. He doesn't wait until the morning. He doesn't ask for a second option or a second opinion. He moves in the middle of the night with a young family towards Egypt, a place loaded with fear and with history. It's not convenience. It's not convenience obedience. This is costly obedience. That Joseph is willing to give up everything that he had in order to follow God's directions. Now, 2020 was probably one of the most chaotic years for most of us in this room. And there's a lot of differing opinions on how everything was handled. I just remember where I was sitting the day in which everything changed. I was sitting with students in Arkansas at a restaurant. We were eating dinner, and on the TV was this NBA game with the Utah Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunders. It was March 11th, and we were watching them warm up. And then there was like a 30-minute delay where the game was supposed to start, but nothing was happening. And so they sent this guy out to perform some concert, and nobody had any idea what was going on. And then 30 minutes later, the NBA came out and they announced that the game had been canceled and that the season was suspended. And then the students went on spring break only to not return to school again that year. And the next Monday, I walked into staff meeting, and the chairs were distant. Nobody had any idea what was going on. This was new territory. Information was coming at us from all different directions, and by March 17th, we had to make a decision based on the information that we had from the state of Arkansas and from the medical professionals at the church I was at, what we were going to do when it comes to church and gathering. And let me tell you, there wasn't a great solution. There wasn't a solution that everybody was going to be happy with, and our leadership made the decision, based on the information that they had, to move all the gatherings online, even though we were not equipped to do so. We were not prepared to make that move. It was a moment where the obedience of trying to follow the Lord and minister to the people of God felt like a decision of urgency rather than a decision of preparation. We immediately had to jump into action and learn how to minister to people in new ways that nothing had prepared us to do so previously. You remember that first time you jumped on a Zoom call? It was so weird, right? We had to learn to minister to people in new ways. I had to, instead of doing student ministry, run a food bank that I had no idea what I was doing, but people were in desperate need of food. And so, a moment where we had to make decisions based on the urgency at the time rather than the preparation. As I think about the story of Joseph here, and I reflect about the things that I learned back in 2020, the thing is that I feel like I learned is that trust is not passive belief. Trust is a movement in response to following God's voice. And sometimes following God's voice doesn't mean staying faithful where you are. Sometimes, in the case for Joseph, it means going to a place that you've never been before. Let's keep looking. In verse 15, it says this: Joseph stayed until the death of Herod, so that was fulfilled what the Lord said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." And when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time that he learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophets, I'm terrible at slides. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. Herod's response to being deceived by the Magi was violence. This is part of the story that's honestly really hard to talk about. It isn't nice. It's not clean. Herod's fear turns into rage. In his longing for power, he clings to control. And innocent children the age of my son, were stripped away from their families and slaughtered. It's not a picture-perfect moment in the story of the gospel. Matthew, he doesn't soften this. He doesn't sweep it away, because Matthew understands that putting our trust in God doesn't mean that we are exempt from suffering. And God's faithfulness doesn't mean the absence of darkness. But what it does mean is that even in the midst of the darkness that we experience in this world, God is up to something. God is still at work. And Jesus is preserved not because the world becomes safe, but because Joseph and Mary were obedient and listened to the voice of the Lord and moved. Hope survives because of the obedience that happens in the midst of the shadows. Let's keep reading in Matthew chapter 2, verse 19 through 21. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, and he took the child and his mother, and he went to the land of Israel. So Joseph, he stayed in Egypt. He wasn't told how long to stay in Egypt. He was just told only to go to Egypt and stay until I tell you to move again. And eventually, God does. Another dream, another set of instructions, another step of trust. I remember when I just finished college, I was working part-time at Skyline Church of Christ in an apprenticeship role with the student ministry. And I was looking and trying to find a full-time job and a place to call home. And I was doing interview after interview after interview after interview, meeting with churches, and nothing seemed to be the right fit. Nothing seemed to be really working out. And so a year out of graduating from college and doing interviews, I wasn't really sure what God's plans were. I wasn't sure what the road looked like ahead. And when I least expected it, and honestly, wondering what God's plans were for me and ready to throw in the towel and start to look elsewhere, I got a call that led to an amazing opportunity in Arkansas. Fast forward 3 years, due to changing circumstances where I was, I found myself in a similar uncertain feeling of what God was calling my family, me and my fiance at the time, now wife at the time, into, when I received a call from Carl Wagner about an amazing opportunity at Hendersonville. And isn't it true that oftentimes in life, we come to a place where we look down the road of life and all we see is uncertainty? And what we see from Mary and Joseph here is that their hope is not sustained by the certainty of knowing what is to come. Their hope is sustained by the confidence of the one who called them to take a step. Their hope was sustained by the one who called them to move. And Matthew, he keeps going in verse 22. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea, a place where his father Herod, in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to a district of Galilee. And he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So it was fulfilled that was said through the prophets that he would be called a Nazarene. So they returned, but not to where they started. Bethlehem is behind them. Jerusalem is unsafe. And so they settled in Nazareth, an ordinary city. Because really, can anything good come from Nazareth? It's just ordinary, unremarkable, overlooked. And isn't that the hardest place sometimes that we find ourselves in the story? When God calls you to just be part of the ordinary things of life. Oftentimes in society we feel this pressure to begin being a part of the impressive and the spectacular, going for the promotion, going for the high status. And we spend our time worrying about our status in the future, and we forget oftentimes where God has placed us right now. I used to ask God frequently where and how He's going to use me in 5 to 10 years down the road. And while that isn't a bad question, what I've come to realize is that when I give more energy to planning and worrying about things to come, I miss out on the opportunities that God might be putting before me today. Opportunities to minister to the students that God has placed in our student ministry. Opportunities to have conversations with families about things that are going on in life. Opportunities to be a dad and a husband to my family. Because I'm so worried about the things that are to come. Have you ever been there? When you're worried about the things to come, that you forget to live in the moment and live out your calling. It's easy for us to bypass the people that we pass in the hallways or the workplace who might not know the Lord when we're only concerned about living for the spotlight. And still, for Joseph, the decision was to follow God even if it meant life among the obscure. Because Joseph knew that the decision that he was making, it wasn't about his status, or it was about bringing glory and the hope of Jesus Christ to everyone in the world. God often does His deepest work in the places that we would never choose. Whether it be in Egypt, through a guy named Moses who felt like he was completely unqualified to do what God had called him to do. Whether it be through a woman named Rahab in Jericho who was viewed as a prostitute. Whether it be through Esther who found herself as queen and an opportunity to save the people of God. Whether it be David as he stood in the presence of a giant, trusting that the Lord was going to provide. Whether it be Daniel as he was captured in Babylon and he stood up for the Lord's faithfulness. Whether it be Jonah, who, even though begrudgingly, went to Nineveh so that people might experience the salvation of God. Or maybe it was Mary, a teenage girl, tasked with raising the Messiah, watching him grow up to fulfill his calling as she stood in front of him as he was hung on the cross. Or maybe it was Joseph, that all he did was ventured back from Egypt, back to Nazareth, to a place where Jesus grows up. Because obscurity, or the places that we don't want to go, are never wasted when God is present in the story. And throughout this series over the holiday season, we've realized that we've listened to moments about the stories of the messengers of hope. The angels that came to Zechariah and to Mary and to the shepherds in the fields, and also Joseph.